This is create an app routine 5. First, I went to the label AE and gave it a comment, show the circles, and I also went to label AF and gave it the comment, X and Y positions known. Alright, I also see here they're referring to something just by variable 04 or 05. Well, I want to give them their actual names, so I'm going to go down here to variable names, and I'll go to the fourth one. What it really stands for is the number of X values, so I'm going to say it's the X count. And number 5 here is the Y count. That's how many different Y values there can be. So that's the Y count. So I enter that. And you see over here, wherever it had those variable names now, it says X count and Y count. Also, I go down here, and I see it has 2 lists that it's using, list 03 and 04. I happen to know that they are for the X value and the Y value. So I'm going to go over here where it says list page names and click on there. And here is number 3. And that's really the X value. X value. And I know that list 04 is the Y value. So now, by giving them names, it'll be easier to understand what's being done with those 2 names. So now you see it says over here X value, Y value, and down below here they're called X value and Y value. Well, let's see. Here I know it's referring to something as list 5. Well, I happen to know that being its given pattern 0 is a circle. So I'm going to change list 05 to circle. Alright, go up here to where 5 is, and I'm going to see that circle. So now we know when we see that's referring to a circle pattern. And here varb 06 is being set to a transparency value, so we'll call that transparent. Okay, well that's a variable name. It's number 6. We'll call it transparency. Alright, we enter that. Alright, is that the last of the ones that we can name? Yes, it is. So we'll start through an explanation of this. First of all, there's part of this routine that's to be run only once. So up here it says, if @G is equal to a 1, go to AF. That's down here. Well, in the beginning, all registers are 0. So the first time it comes here, it's going to fall through and come down here. But the first thing it does is it sets @G to 1, so it won't come down here again. Alright, when it comes down here, we set the X count and the Y count. We set X to 520. What that means is we're going to allow the value of X to be randomly picked between 0 and 519. With a Y value, we're going to allow it to be randomly picked from 0 to 219. Next thing it says reset all the probabilities. Alright, so each one of the random selections is set to the beginning again. Then it says for I equals 0 to I of 499 one at a time. So that means it'll go around 500 times. it's going to use the peck action to pick a random value, in this case between 0 and 419 for x. It will then pick a random value for y, which up here we know it's going to be from 0 to 219. Now, they each have a different seed number. The first random selection is seed 1, and the second is seed 2. If they would both have the same seed value, there would be a relationship between what was picked for the x and the y. And you don't want to have that. This is supposed to be random. There's no relationship. The next thing it does is it adds 340 to the x value. That gets it over into the subcanvas area. Remember, anything we show after the subcanvas is made has to be in that area. And the y value is increased by 90 to get it down into that subcanvas area. Then it takes x value and puts it at x value plus offset of I, which we know is going from 0 to 499. Same is done for the y value. It saves the values it calculated. And by the time it ends here, it calculated 500 values. Well, the next two lines move the beginning of the x values to offset x value plus 500. Same it does for the y values. Because when it starts at one of the values, and then it always increases for the next, and next. Instead of wrapping back to the beginning again, we just put the beginning at the end. It's duplicated. Alright, after that is done, we go down here and we do a tick action on T 500. It's going to go from 0 to 499. It's going to be used to get the number from x value and y value. So it's going to go from 0 to 499. The next thing it does is it gets the given pattern 0 and puts it in circle. Well, given pattern 0 is a circle. And the next thing it sets the size for it to be 150. Then it starts with a transparency value of 8,800. We'll see later on that it always makes that 1,000 value, but it changes over time. Next, it sets the value of C to the third color. Then it mods it with 1,000. It only wants to know the red, green, and blue part of the color, not the transparency or any dual color information. Then it goes around a loop for I of 1, and down here to 50, one at a time. It's going to make 50 circles. Well, the first thing it does, it sets A to the transparency value up here. But then it divides it by 1,000 and then multiplies it by 1,000. So all it has is the transparency value, which is going to be an 8, then a 7, then a 6, then a 5, a 4. But it's not going to change 50 times. It's going to change by a smaller number, which down here is 160 is what it's going to subtract from the transparency. But it's only going to put the digit for transparency in the color. So here we have it adding to A the red, green, and blue values for the third color. Then it says the color is A. That's what we call the active color now is set to that value of A. Then it sets the XY position to one of the random values that it made up above here. So it puts the random position, Then it says, make a dot list given the circle and the information necessary for a pattern. So that dot list can be used by this polyfill instruction here, and then it'll be displayed in the sub-canvas. Then each time it subtracts something from the transparency. What it's really doing is it starts out at a value that is high in transparency, meaning it's practically invisible, and makes it closer to being the full color with no transparency. And at the same time, the size of it is being decreased. And then it adds 1 to T and goes around and does another circle. So we know it goes around 50 times. It's going to make 50 circles, each time changing the amount of transparency and the size. When we see it on the screen, it's going to appear like it starts out small and then goes to big. But actually the way they're being written out is the big ones are going to small. Well, but it appears to you that it's going the other way. Alright, this is routine 5 for create an app.